Set in Rome, the movie introduces us to Johnny, a middle-aged businessman who is quite successful and charismatic. He has almost every aspect of his life under control except for one, his addiction to women. This is by no means an exaggeration. Whenever he sees an attractive woman on the street, he wants to take her to his bed. To accomplish this, he combines his natural charm with deceptive tactics, creating a unique identity for each woman. His friend Fabio often recounts these exploits to his colleagues at the club, at which point Johnny remarks that Fabio's wife might also be interested in him. This man knows no limits. On the other hand, there is Dario, Johnny's personal physician, and also the voice of his conscience, who suggests that he start a lasting relationship with one woman before he reaches 50. In the middle of his dinner, Johnny receives an unexpected call about his mother. This is the other aspect of his life he can't control, as he has grown quite distant from his family. It is now too late to mend that relationship, because he is informed that his mother has passed away. At the funeral, his brother Flavio dedicates some beautiful parting words to her. Johnny, of course, does not even try to say anything. After the funeral, the protagonist visits his old home, where he sits in his late mother's wheelchair to look at family photos. He seems moved until Aliyah, an attractive young woman who recently moved into the neighborhood, shows up. Seeing him in the wheelchair, Aliyah mistakes him for a disabled man and reveals that she used to care for such people in a specialized home. Obviously, Johnny decides to play along so he can take advantage of her services. The next day at his shoe company, called High Speed, Johnny scolds his employees for the recent drop in sales. That is when one of the employees, Julia, suggests creating a brand for Paralympic athletes to reach new customers. However, Johnny makes it clear that his brand is focused on popular influencers, not on disabled people who barely have one pair of shoes. As if that were not enough, he decides to fire Julia on the spot. Later, Johnny goes back to his mother's house to disguise himself as a paraplegic and visit Aliyah. While they have coffee, she mentions that she likes being single, but occasionally dates millionaire men without caring about their age. Upon hearing this, Johnny drops his act of being a middle-class citizen and reveals that he is the owner of High Speed, a successful shoe brand with 148 stores across Europe. His move is perfect, as Aliyah invites him to her family's country home. There, Johnny has to move around in a wheelchair for the first time, so neither Aliyah nor her parents and grandmother suspect anything. A few minutes later, the missing member of the family arrives, Chiara, Aliyah's sister. Johnny is dazzled by her beauty until he sees her getting out of the car and into a wheelchair. Suddenly, Aliyah's invitation makes perfect sense. She wants to pair him up with her paraplegic sister, seizing the opportunity of having a rich man in the same condition. Despite Chiara's beauty and charm, Johnny shows no interest in her and wants to leave as soon as possible. Later, Johnny tells his friends at the club about the situation, admitting that Chiara is attractive, but that he would never be with someone who is disabled. However, when Fabio challenges him to sleep with her, Johnny feels compelled to accept out of pride. Elsewhere, Aliyah bumps into Flavio and tells him how wonderful his disabled brother is. Flavio decides to keep the truth to himself, though he later goes to Gianni, pointing out that his charade has gone too far. Gianni dismisses his warning as a joke, calling him jealous because he is bald. The next day, before heading to work, Johnny calls Chiara to ask her out for the weekend. At the office, Johnny learns that Chiara is on her way to surprise him, so he sits at his desk in an awkward position. When Chiara arrives, she tells him that she will be busy over the weekend, but invites him to her disabled tennis tournament to make up for it. Later, while Chiara plays tennis, Johnny watches her with admiration. She is more agile than he ever imagined. After the match, she invites him to dinner with her disabled friends, putting him in a very uncomfortable situation. Everyone asks him about his condition, but he has no idea what to say. On another day, to make up for that failed dinner, Johnny shows up unannounced at one of Chiara's violin concerts. For the first time in his life, he is moved by classical music, all thanks to Chiara. After the concert, he takes her to an upscale restaurant where, loaded with guilt, he's about to tell her the truth. However, he changes the subject at the last second and confesses he is attracted to her instead. In the middle of his confession, Johnny creates chaos with his new electric wheelchair, which he has no idea how to control. Even so, he accompanies her to her hotel room, where they finally kiss for the first time. She stops him abruptly, though, because she is not yet ready to take the next step. Seeking advice, Johnny asks Dario if men who are paraplegic can still get an erection. To his relief, Dario confirms that they can, though he suggests Johnny focus more on how to satisfy Chiara. After this, Johnny calls Chiara to plan their next date, while he also looks for a different woman to be his lover for that night. Meanwhile, Chiara tells her sister how wonderful Johnny is. He sees her as a complete woman and doesn't pity her like everyone else. When it's time for the date, Johnny welcomes Chiara to his house, where she moves nimbly with her wheelchair, while he keeps bumping into things. During dinner, she asks him how his legs became paralyzed. Johnny tells her he had an accident similar to that of Christopher Reeve, the famous Superman actor from 1979 who became paraplegic after falling off a horse. But Chiara reminds him that Reeve was paralyzed from the neck down after that accident. Johnny's solution? He explains his case was not as severe because he didn't fall off a horse but from a pony. Now it's Chiara's turn to tell her story, and hers is definitely more tragic. Several years ago, she had a car accident in which her passenger came out with minor injuries, and her violin did not get a scratch. However, fate had other plans for her, costing her the use of her legs. To comfort her, Johnny gives her a float, and within seconds the room fills with water until they find themselves floating. When Chiara feels her body move freely, she throws herself into Johnny's arms and they make passionate love. Once the water drains and she falls asleep, Johnny takes a photo of her so he can show his friends and prove he won the bet. That night, Gianni enjoys himself with Fabio's wife until she breaks a wine glass, calling herself disabled because of her clumsiness. That remark upsets Gianni so much that he immediately kicks her out of his home. In the following days, Gianni rarely talks to Chiara, but his moral compass starts to change. He even asks his secretary Luciana to rehire Julia to attract disabled customers, since she is very good at that, and so on. He also realizes that he misses Chiara and decides to visit her apartment, letting her know beforehand that he needs to confess something very important. While she finishes playing a musical piece, Johnny looks at her childhood photos, from a time when she could still use her legs. Overcome with guilt, Johnny stands up from his wheelchair to tell her the truth, but quickly sits back down before Chiara turns around. When she asks about his confession, Johnny changes the subject to make her laugh. During their talk, Chiara reveals that her ex-boyfriend left her after her accident, so she stopped believing in love, until Johnny appeared. This only increases the nerves of the fake paraplegic, who decides to hide the truth for much longer. That night, Johnny goes to dinner with Chiara, along with Dario and Luciana, because Chiara wants to meet his friends. On the way, Johnny cannot hide his obvious attraction to Chiara, so his companions warn him to tell her the truth, or they will do it themselves. At dinner, Dario gets ready to follow through on his threat, but Gianni accidentally spills soup on Dario's shirt, forcing him to go to the bathroom. There, Dario warns Gianni that his ruse has gone way too far and that he is only hurting Chiara. Johnny still refuses to face reality. The next day, his brother Flavio does it for him, telling Aaliyah the truth. Furious, Aaliyah goes to confront Gianni, slaps him, and gives him an ultimatum. He has 2 days to tell Chiara his lies if he doesn't want her to find out in the worst possible way. Full of anxiety, Johnny visits a nursing home to see his estranged father, who is also a ladies' man, without a cause. However, his father expresses regret for having been a bad husband and urges his son not to make the same mistakes. He must tell Chiara the truth, even if it means losing her. Right at that moment, they hear the director promoting a trip to Lourdes, a region of France well known among Catholics, because of rumors that the holy water can cure any ailment. Hearing this, Johnny and his father both have the same idea. Invite Chiara to Lourdes, where Gianni will pretend to have regained his mobility thanks to the holy water. When Chiara tells Aaliyah about these plans, Aaliyah immediately suspects Johnny's intentions and decides to reveal the truth about him. Surprisingly, Chiara does not react with shock because part of her already suspected it, given Johnny's awkwardness in a wheelchair. Even so, she fooled herself because he made her feel loved and desired. The next day at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Lourdes, Father Walter is welcoming tourists until he notices Johnny and invites him inside to talk privately. With decades of experience, Walter has figured out that Johnny is not paraplegic and asks him not to stand up from the wheelchair when he touches the holy water, as that would give the others false hope. Johnny leaves the cathedral as if nothing had happened, continuing his ruse. Feeling disappointed, Kiara heads toward the tour bus, failing to notice a speeding truck coming her way. Fortunately, Gianni manages to grab her just in time, although he has to use his legs to do it. Kiara decides to keep up appearances, exclaiming that a miracle has happened to Gianni. However, once on the bus, she cannot hold back her tears. Back in Rome, Gianni's problems only worsen. He receives a punch from Fabio for having an affair with his wife and loses the respect of his club acquaintances. Seeking solace, Gianni goes to his mother's grave to confess and get this huge weight off his chest. Gianni returns to work feeling renewed, putting Julia in charge of the brand's campaign for disabled athletes. Still, Gianni senses something is missing: Kiara. So he heads to her family's house, where he finds only her grandmother, who refuses to tell him where Kiara is, because she knows men like him only want temporary flings. Gianni admits that, mentally, he is a mess, but insists he has fallen in love with Kiara, something he has never felt for anyone else. Seeing that he speaks from the heart, her grandmother tells him that Kiara is on the way to another town for a concert and provides the route and schedule so he can catch up to her. Before he leaves, though, she warns him that if he ever hurts Kiara again, she will make him disabled for real. Although Gianni intercepts the bus in time, Kiara indicates that she doesn't need anyone's pity and completely ignores him. Back in Rome, Gianni goes for his usual jog, but memories of Kiara haunt him and he collapses to his knees. When he looks up, he sees someone unexpected: Kiara, who invites him to sit in her wheelchair so they can start over. In the final scene, we see Gianni's 50th birthday party with friends, Kiara's family, and his brother, who has managed to win over Aaliyah. While everyone dances happily, Gianni picks up his beloved Kiara to dance at their own pace.